Welcome to Caregiver Cast with Mary Elaine Petrucci. Are you overwhelmed raising a family, working full-time, caring for a parent or grandparent? It can be challenging when you're doing it alone. Caregiver Cast helps busy, burned-out professionals reduce their stress and overwhelm to create a better caregiving experience for themselves and their loved one. Caregiver Cast brings caregivers together with experts who provide information in a variety of areas. In each episode, you'll get tips on topics such as finance, legal, medical, self-care, community resources, mindset, and more. We're here to make your caregiving journey a more rewarding one. Acquire the confidence and skills to be a more capable caregiver by implementing the resources and strategies from these expert thought leaders. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. And now here's your host, Mary Elaine Petrucci.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Caregiver Cast. I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci, your host. My special guest today is Tammy Goen, and she will be talking to us about honoring and taking care of yourself. It's such an important topic, especially for caregivers and other coaches who tend to put themselves last. So taking care of oneself first before helping someone else is really critical in your caregiving or coaching career. Before I formally introduce Tammy, I am just going to give you some background information about her. Tammy's eclectic approach as a holistic life coach encompasses skills developed through her previous counseling practice, 20 years of providing energy healing, certifications in EFT or tapping, and heart math meditation, and 8 years as a coach. Tammy's work encompasses mind, body, spirit practices and includes the use of art in connection with nature, as well as mindful practices, meditation, and energy work. EFT or tapping is a key component of her approach, helping clients release beliefs limiting them from accessing their superpower. Highly sensitive herself, she understands what it's like to navigate the non-sensitive world as a highly sensitive person. She loves to help her clients develop tools to minimize overwhelm, develop self-compassion and self-love, and embrace their trait and move from surviving to thriving. Her sensitivities also help while working with non-highly sensitive people by understanding the client's experience and intuiting what can help. Welcome, Tammy, to Caregiver Cast. How are you?
I am so good, Mary Elaine. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. So can you just explain a little bit to the audience about what it means to be a highly sensitive person?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite questions. Being highly sensitive, or I like the term actually highly sensing, and some people use high sensory. In our culture these days, sensitive can have kind of a negative connotation or be kind of, have a heavy weighted feeling. So highly sensing is my preference, because highly sensitive, as you'll probably hear more, people are, we process things at a really deep level, and actually differences in our brain in terms of the way we process things. And so it's more like being like a really big sponge without all the filters that non-highly sensitives would have. So it's like having, if you have two buckets, one is your energy and one is all of the input from the world. Our input bucket gets really full really fast, and we can get really depleted on our energy bucket because our nervous system starts amped up higher than average, the way we process everything. And then, of course, as the stuff comes in, it gets more challenging to deal with because our bucket's getting full and eventually overflows, and we really need to take care of ourselves first, as everyone does. I mean, everything I work with highly sensitives is, appropriate to every single person on the planet, really. It's just more specifically needed at a deeper level for sensitives because of that nervous system, which is why I start talking about, calming that nervous system as a first step, no matter what. I mean, if somebody's feeling stressed or overwhelmed, that's where to start. And highly sensing folks, we process things deeply. We also experience them at a really deep level, and that can be positive and challenging. So what I do is help people to realize what the benefits are to having that sensitivity, that heightened sensitivity, because it's really amazing for things like, just really, really enjoying and engaging with the world. And we're moved by beauty and nature and art and things like that. And we have these really deep experiences, which is really great. And there's, I mean, if we were just talking about that for a while, I could go on and on, but there are a lot of really, really nice benefits to that sensitivity, but it requires having the right tools to calm that nervous system, having the right mindset to recognize that this is just, it's a genetic trait. It's just the way we're born. And so if we are more likely to get, have a negative reaction to something, or get upset, or hold on to something, or just see things that others don't see, or pay attention to things that others just don't even consider or worry about, that's because of the way we're wired, not because we're just being picky or finicky or dramatic or whatever. So being able to honor where we are as a sensitive and use all of those tools that everyone else uses too, but recognizing that that's just that much more important, so we can balance that nervous system. And I mean, ultimately for everyone, we want to go from fight or flight to rest and digest, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, same, that same stuff where you're kind of running from the tiger. And that happens with especially long-term stress response, like being a caregiver or being in a situation where there's just constantly stuff going on and you're concerned about people, and you're putting out, then your body thinks 24/7 that you are running from that tiger. Really, really important to honor that and see that, the old adage is, put on your oxygen mask and then help someone else, which, if you're flying a plane, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. That makes sense. Because if you don't have one yourself, how long are you going to help someone, right? But it's the same thing when you're not on an airplane, just life in general. You do have to fill that bucket. Or like one of my ideas too is like, if you have like a pitcher of water and you want to fill a bunch of glasses, right? You can't do that if your pitcher's empty, right? I mean, you just have nothing to pull from. You have to constantly be putting stuff into that pitcher so that you have something to work with. So that's why it's so easy in our culture to think, oh yeah, when I have time, I'll take care of me. Or, oh, well, if this spot opens up today, then I'll do some meditation or whatever, but, we'll see how it goes. And then of course it tends to not happen because life gets busy. And then we're kind of last, on the bottom of the totem pole again. And eventually we'll get sick, worn out, exhausted, withdraw, not want to engage in the world anymore. It's just so important, which is why I'm glad that we're talking about that here. And I'm sure people hear that all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to take care of myself. Like, when am I supposed to do that? I've got all these people I'm supposed to be taking care of. So at some point, maybe I'll do that. But getting folks to acknowledge that, no, this is like mandatory. It's not just like an extra superfluous thing that, if you have time, throw that in. It's like necessary to be able to manage and maintain and be the person that you want to be. I mean, that's ultimately the goal. And in my view is, if you want to be who you want to be, become that best version of you, it has to start with taking care of you as well and first. And that can be seen as really selfish. So helping to shift that mindset of not selfish, necessary. And if you're highly sensitive, it's that much more necessary because of that imbalance and the challenge with that nervous system. Yeah, so that was a long answer, but
No, I appreciate that. That was just really a lot of golden nuggets. So let me just kind of parse through it a little. So first of all, how does one know that they're a highly sensing person? And if that is part of who they are, and their caregiving, how does a highly sensing person let other people know their needs? Because I agree with you. You need to put in or block in time for yourself, whether at the beginning of the day, in the middle, or at the end. You really need to fill your bucket, which like that picture. I totally agree with that. So let's bring in highly sensitive people who are caregivers. And how does one know that they're a highly sensing person? And number two, how can they then put that oxygen mask on first?
A good way to frame that. So first, I think it's really helpful to realize that being highly sensing, it's not a disorder, it's not a diagnosis, it's not a condition, nothing that needs to be changed or fixed. So there isn't like go here and see if you get that diagnosis. But there are inventories, and you can search and find some online. I have one on my website. So it just asks you a bunch of questions that tend to happen within that range of high sensitivity. And it is a range. I mean, some people are like pegged at the top, some are kind of in the middle, and some are like, yeah, none of this stuff really bothers me. It's all a continuum. And sometimes it's, medium, but these two things are like off the charts. So sometimes, it's variable that way. Even if it's like, okay, well, I scored really high overall, but really only two of these things are really intense. So it really depends, but it's really helpful to have that. First, if nothing else, it's incredibly validating, because sensing people tend to spend their life feeling weird, outcasts, something wrong with them. No one understands them. They're just like this isolated person that needs to like fix themselves. So when you see an inventory written, on a screen, whatever, and all of these questions that like, you go, oh yeah, that and that one and that one. And you realize it's not just me, because there's an inventory online. That's how I discovered it. It's like, okay, well, obviously it's big enough. There's enough people that someone put this, on the internet. So that just by itself is really validating. If you see yourself a lot of those questions and you go, okay, there's a reason for how I react to things or what my experience in life is like. There is a real solid reason for that. And I kind of liken it to being left-handed or right-handed. You're just wired a certain way. So you are either wired when you're born with high sensitivity or you're not. And so you're going to perceive things differently. You're going to interact differently. And that's just, so that can be very, very validating. And then the other piece is that if you have an inventory like that, and you can actually, you can request me, I can send you like a printed copy. The one that's on my website, is an auto populate, kind of thing, but I can send you an actual form that you can use, because it's really helpful to present to someone else, how to share with someone. If you say, okay, wow, this is me, I've scored all but 3 on this big list of things. Well, I do that. Well, if you're having an altercation or communication issue with someone, or you need to set things up a certain way in your work environment, you just want someone to understand where you're coming from more, even if they're not going to get it, because if they're not also highly sensing, they're not going to see things that way. It's just not, you're just wired differently. It's not going to happen, but they can have a, compassion and understanding and see that you're not just being dramatic or, ridiculous or whatever. So you can take that and hand that to someone. I recommend doing it, blank, and say, hey, would you look at this? And, have them look it over, maybe even just take it themselves. And, in my case, when I did that with someone that I was having my actual years ago, my business partner, and we were having, conflict. And so I, had her take that, and she kind of looked around and she's like, oh, okay. Like kind of confused, like, I don't know what this is all about. And then I explained that I had scored all but 2 on this list of, 20 some items. And she was quite shocked. And then she went and looked through and she said, oh, like this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, that's my life. And that's why I reacted this way. And so then she had a total new understanding of me not being just ridiculous, or, that there was a reason that I wouldn't let things go, or needed to know more information, or was still concerned about something, or why I reacted more than she would, those kinds of things. So if you have that to use as a communication tool, it can be really just say, hey, this is me. after they've looked at it and said, I, scored all of these, like we can talk about this one and this one and this one. And so therefore what I need is, and then it can actually help you become aware of what your needs are when you recognize that, oh, I am actually wired to see things this way, or to feel this way, or to experience things, this way. So now I know, what will help me with this, and I can share that with people. And then part of it is just honoring, yourself and what your own needs are. So if you realize, oh, okay, I'm super responsive, reactive to my physical environment in terms of like lights and sounds and textures and things like that. That's not across the board, but for most highly sensing people, that can be, especially the sound piece or the lights or something like that. And so oh, okay, I'm wired that way. So it's not unreasonable within the 20 to 25% of the world that's highly sensing. That's normal. So you can reframe that and say, okay, well, what's going to help me with that? So if it's in a work environment, maybe not having so many lights on, or choosing the ones that don't flicker, or, something that's not going to bother you, or, when I'm here working, can we have this kind of music instead of this one that really puts me on edge, or, something like that, being able to shift what we can in our environment. And then internally, of course, being more of what we need. So in terms of the second part of your question about like, how do you put your oxygen mask on? The very first important thing I think is, again, calming that nervous system. And that requires being in the moment and present. So if you think of it in terms of mindful practices, or if meditation or yoga, or just really deep breathing, that's the very easiest one to do, because you can do that anywhere. If you just take the time to stop, that's the big thing. Say, okay, 5 minutes before I start my day, I'm going to just be in this moment, breathe really deeply. And I'll talk about the vagus nerve in a second. Just breathe deeply and super slow. And just focus in. And when your mind starts to wander, because it does that, especially if you're going to like sit down and try to meditate and you're like, I can't do this, my mind won't shut off. Well, that's what your mind is supposed to do. So just recognizing it and then coming back and just say, oh, okay, I can let that go. Because if we focus on the past or the future, that's when we get in that fight or flight mode, because we're always worried or concerned about something. But with that moment, then we get to just be. And then our nervous system says, oh, there's no tiger. I'm not running from anything. I'm safe. Everything's okay. That feels good, and then you can shift into that. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, all this stuff, but for highly sensitives, it's that much more important. And for anyone who's caregiving, of course, it's just super important to be able to say, I'm important and I have to take care of me so that I can take care of everyone else. And I have to start doing that by calming myself down, calming my nervous system. So the deep breathing is really, really effective. And again, you can do that anywhere. And even if somebody's looking at you, you can breathe deeply and not think that they're going to be looking at you odd. Meditation, I think a daily meditation is amazing. Once I started doing that consistently every single day, I actually started noticing, not that I'm not as sensitive anymore, I'm just as sensitive as I've always been, but I'm not reactive to things in the same way. I can tolerate things more, or I'm aware of it, but don't go, that kind of thing. Because my nervous system is calmer. And so I attribute that to my meditation, because when that happened, when I started realizing like, wow, I just ignored something that I've never been able to ignore. That came, as a result of a few months of every single day committing to that consistent meditation practice. And it's not for everyone, but I also spent a lot of time talking with people on how to be successful at meditating, because there's so many different, misconceptions about it, that you can be bad at it, and that that's not for you. And you can certainly learn, how to accommodate that as a tool. But something like that, that especially if you can start your day that way, so your body isn't already, amped up and buzzing, and you can just say, okay, I'm calm, going forward now. And then we usually have a little bit more bandwidth to work with. And I would say that, first the breathing, and then some kind of, quiet, focused in meditation, mindful practice. Sometimes you can even just sit in the room and pay attention to all of the sounds that are around you. So
Mm.
focusing your brain on something, it's not, thinking about things other than, oh, okay, I can hear the clock. What does that sound like? It's like, a really high pitch. It's whatever, and you're paying attention. And then you go over here and you listen to like, oh, I can hear in my case, the wood stove and a crackle now and then. And what's that like? And so my brain is engaged and busy enough to not be worried about the past and thinking about the future. But
Right.
it's keeping a lot of those extraneous, things out because I am focused in that moment. So finding something like that that resonates for you is super important. And then the vagus nerve piece, and there's a lot of research on this now, with the vagal nerve, there's therapy on it and that kind of thing. But if you can address that nerve, that's what shifts you into that rest and digest mode. And
Mhm.
things like simply breathing super deeply, because again, that tells your body there's no danger. If I can sit here and breathe really slowly and deeply, then everything's okay.
Mhm.
So that helps. And then if you can make your exhale just slightly longer than the inhale, then it triggers it that much more. And then there are things like gargling and singing loudly and humming that also trigger that. And again, I think it makes sense that those are the things that, if you were really in danger, you wouldn't be humming, you wouldn't be singing, you wouldn't be doing those things. So when you're doing them, your body goes, oh, life is good. Yep, I'm good. So that's how I always have people start, in terms of that, like, okay, how do I start taking care of myself?
Right.
And the extra piece that I was throwing in there too is that you have to, if you're not used to doing any of that stuff for yourself, you have to schedule it, physically schedule it
Yes.
into
Yes.
your daily planner, your
Mhm.
phone, whatever, because it's not going to just automatically, oh, it's that time, I'm going to think of this, it's like, oh, right, I'm supposed to be doing that. Let me take care of that now and go do it until it becomes, a habit. I mean, for me, if I don't have my meditation, I feel really off because I'm so used to it. And it's a certain order in my, my daily routine. And
Mhm.
something happens and suddenly I like have to leave or something and I didn't get that. I can tell, so I mean, I it's an automatic thing for me now. I do this, and then I might meditate. It just happens. But until then, it really needs to be a focal point in your schedule to make that happen.
Great advice. I totally agree with you. I think unless you can schedule something in when you're first starting a new practice, you tend to forget it. And it also makes you more accountable to yourself because you have it in your calendar. You have to do that or need to do it so that you can be more present, not only with yourself, but with the person that you're caring for, and that you can be ready for any unforeseen emergency that may occur during the day. So I totally agree with taking the breath work, meditating, just any way of getting into a different mindset so that you are clearing out all that noise that keeps bombarding all of us every day, every moment of our life. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And why is it important, going from what you've just spoken about, why is it important for people, especially caregivers or highly sensing people, to manage stress?
Well, so stress, first of all, stress is like a neutral word. We just make it negative. I mean, there are stressors, in the world, and it's our stress response that makes it, not healthy for us. So
Right.
it's what we do with all of the stuff, around. And as highly sensing people, more of that stuff is coming in. So it's all about managing what is happening. And when we're in that fight or flight all the time, we, I mean, if I don't want to go into too big a detail, I guess, but we have these things on our genes called telomeres. They're little caps, and eventually they start to wear down, and that's how we age. And when we and all of our body systems are, all of our cells, everything react to this level of stress response. And so it actually tends to cut off, burrow away at those telomeres and kind of
Right.
little fraying bits of my cells, which we don't want things to be frayed, right? We want things to be nice and smooth. And so when there's a lot of stress reactions, our body actually starts to age more quickly. We're more prone to disease or, just some kind of illness. And probably everyone's experienced this. You go, and then you finally get a break and then you get sick, because your body finally goes, geez. And then it's
Exactly.
like, well, let's heal now. And then you get a cold or whatever. So all of those reactions that we have to things are just not healthy, for our bodies. And we're trying to take care of other people. If we're not healthy ourselves, that makes that more challenging. And, one thing that I always work with people on too, is that there's nothing that says that if someone else is suffering, so if you're in your view that someone that you're taking care of is going through a really rough time and you're not in that same place, that you might feel guilty because you feel better, you think you feel better than they do, or you're more fortunate than they are, or whatever. So there's like this inherent stress built up in like, oh, I'm with this person, they're having such a hard time, and I don't want to be having such a good time, and there's big discrepancy kind of thing. So that can things as well. So when we hold on to all of that kind of stuff, then our bodies, again, they're in that fight or flight mode. They can't do the, because the part of the like rest and digest is all of our systems get to cleanse and detoxify and, get rid of all the toxins and build good tissues and all of that kind of stuff. And so if we're not in that mode often enough, then everything gets deteriorated, much more quickly. And you get exhausted, not feeling passion anymore, not really engaged in the world anymore, feeling just overwhelmed and sometimes kind of lost, like nothing's really that important anymore. I mean, you can have so many different reactions to those stressors that are out there. So super important to take care of that from the ground up first. It's like, okay, I need to prevent the onslaught of all of this stuff, because you can't change the whole world, right? I mean, we can change one step at a time, we can all make a difference, but there's so much going on. It's not like we can just say, oh, all this stuff is bothering me and then I'm just going to change it all. But we can change what we do with it all. And so, a lot of that, like you are familiar with, working on mindset and changing what your thoughts are about something, so that changes your feelings about it and your response to it and your behavior. So recognizing that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that can be stressful. We can choose to not have it affect us as much. And part of that is mindset. Part of it is that, building up the stress response system, building up that good rest and digest nervous system, so, that can manage that stuff, more easily.
Wow, fantastic. You're so knowledgeable. So what is your first tip for minimizing the stress response and overwhelm so that you can be more present with the person that you're caring for and just more present in your life? Can you give us some idea?
So, one thing that, and I tend to focus on high sensitivity, but all this stuff is good for everyone. So one thing that I recommend, and a lot of other people do too, is if you need to stop throughout the day and check in with yourself and see how you're doing. Because if you're going and taking care of everyone and you're not finding out what you're doing, then you're not even considering it, and you're not going to do anything about it. So if you stop every so often, and one person that I listen to that's a psychotherapist with high sensitivity, and I always do this too, but I like the piece that she adds with the bathroom piece. So if you do this every time you go to the bathroom, you do that multiple times a day, and you get used to that being your habit, then you know that you'll get that at least that many times a day. And you do a self check-in, and all you do is you say, how am I doing? What do I need? And just be honest with yourself. Say, how am I doing? Oh, you know what? My shoulders are up at my ears. Okay, I'm holding on to something. I must be feeling a little stressed. What do I need? Maybe I need 5 minutes of deep breathing. And then, you just make that happen. And then through, and then the next time you go into the bathroom, or, you can have little sticky notes or set a timer on your clock, on your watch, or watch or phone or whatever, and then say, oh, check-in time. How am I doing? And then listen. And so maybe you don't have time to, what I really need is a nap. Okay, maybe you can't do that right then, but maybe you can just get quiet, close down a little bit, take some nice deep breaths, and then plan ahead. When could I take a nap, or what else could help me recharge other than a nap? If you can't, fit that in, but find something. Don't just ignore it completely, or that the exercise isn't going to be, valuable. It's not going to really help. So even if it's just 30 seconds of breathing, if that's all you can do, if you really think nothing else can fit in, do 30 seconds of deep breathing. It will make a big difference.
Okay.
But also just the consistent check-in throughout the day is going to make a huge difference, because then you're aware, oh yeah, I do need to pay attention to how I'm doing, as well as, whoever I'm taking care of, or whatever my chores are or responsibilities. I still need to be aware of what my needs are. And if we don't ask ourselves, we often just, get to the end of the day and go, wow, I am wiped out. What just happened? And then you can look back and go, oh, this, and then this, and then this. And maybe after each of those events, if you had 30 seconds of breathing, or if you'd taken 5 minutes and, walked around the block or around the house, or, going out and touch a tree, or, read an inspiring blog post, or, something that would just kind of reset a little bit and let you take that's not, that nice deep, okay, now I'm okay, now I can go forward. And if you do that, throughout the day, then you're in a much better place. And one thing I wanted to mention too is that every time that you opt for some of these, self-care behaviors, and someone else sees them, some people can be like, oh, I don't want anyone to see that I'm deep breathing, or that I'm closing my eyes and, meditating for a minute, or whatever. But the benefit of that is that you become a mentor for other people to, they're like, oh, so what are you doing there? Like, oh, well, I was feeling myself getting amped up, and I wanted to calm myself down. So I just, did some deep breathing for a minute. And most of the time, other people are being going, oh, I could do that. That sounds amazing, So even in a caregiving situation, or, at work or whatever, if it's not in caregiving, whatever it is, if you stop periodically and just do that, just reset, get up, move around, walk around, do whatever, and say, or even, let somebody know, I need to just take care of myself for a minute. I'm going to go, walk around outside for a second. I'll be right back. And you do that and make that obvious, and not like hide it, keep it, secretive. Then other people will see, for one, that you're taking care of yourself. So they'll know that you're more able to take care of them, because you're doing what you need to do, for you. And they want you to be the best that you can be, so that you can be taking care of them in the best way possible. So they would want that for you. So being able to honor that, not only is it okay that you're doing it, but it's okay for other people to know that you're doing it. In fact, it's really good for them to know, for their own benefit, but also because then they realize, oh, she's taking care of herself.
Right.
That's awesome. And I could learn from that, maybe. And sometimes people like, can you teach me that? That breathing thing that you were doing, or whatever. So I think that's a good way to get it into your schedule more, if you're willing to do it where other people see you. And then, sometimes that's not available or appropriate or whatever, but you still need that. You can always like seclude yourself in the bathroom for 5 minutes and just sit there and breathe, or do a little quick meditation, or whatever, yoga poses, whatever it is that will help you recenter. So even if you're in an environment that's not conducive to that, and you're not comfortable with that, there's always the bathroom, or a closet, I guess. Closets don't usually have windows, so it's kind of nicer to be in a bathroom, but somewhere where you can, or just again, just like, I'm going to go walk outside for 5 minutes. I'll be right back. And honor that, and see it not as selfish or weak, or, oh, I have to do that again, but as, wow, look at that, I am taking charge, and self-empowerment, right? It's like, I need this to be the person I want to be, so I'm going to do it. Yeah. And if someone sees me, great. And if they ask me, then I'll explain, I'm taking care of myself. But it is part of that, mindset shift, like, oh, that is a good thing. Okay, I could practice that.
I love that. I that is amazing to think of it as being a mentor to other people. And you're right. You really need to step aside, or possibly include the person that you're caring for in that activity. So, for example, when I was with my mother, who had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, we would, I would take her in her wheelchair at the mall, and we would just enjoy being together and, just looking at things and just being present for one another. So I think you can sometimes include other people in whatever activity that you're using, so you can be more mindful. Because I also think you can show other people how to be a mentor as well, because you're taking care of yourself while you're taking care of someone else, actually taking care of someone else. I really think it's important for caregivers to understand it, like you've mentioned, it's not selfish. It's something that you really need to do for yourself. So you're not being reactive, you're being calm. So when anything unexpected arises, then you're able to really meet that challenge more effectively.
Exactly.
So, I really appreciate your comments in that. So can you give us, or what you see as the biggest obstacle for caregivers in staying healthy and happy and being centered?
Yeah, I think, first is that mindset of it's selfish and I don't have time and I'm supposed to be taking care of everybody else first.
Mhm.
So, crossing that bridge, shifting that belief.
Mhm.
And then again, just that being aware. So doing the check-ins and acknowledging that, oh, I'm feeling a little off right now, or I'm really stressed right now. And instead of getting on yourself for that, or saying, oh, well, suck it up, I have to wait till the end of the day or the end of the shift or whatever, just saying, oh, okay, what can I do with that?
Mhm.
And as you were talking a minute ago, I was thinking, what would be really cool, I think too, is if you are caregiving for someone who can engage with you. I mean, what a gift to be, because everyone needs this, right? So what about saying, hey, I've found meditation to be really, really beneficial. Would you like to meditate together? Or
Mhm.
deep breathing,
Right.
or some kind of mindful practice. Hey, let's get our minds off of stuff, and let's see how many things we can hear in the room right now, and do that focus, but with them at the same time, instead of saying, oh, I want to do this, but it's going to take away from my work time or whatever. Just
Right.
we'll offer that to your person that you're caring for, because they would benefit too.
Mhm.
So incorporating that into your schedule through involving them and including them, and they get that benefit of not only seeing you take care of yourself, but experiencing what is that like to do that breathing exercise. Oh wow, that feels amazing.
Right.
Just an added tool in some ways in your box of caregiving, to be able to include them, I think would be amazing.
Thank you for that. You've talked about mindset. So why is it important then for caregivers or highly sensing people to really stop and look at their thoughts, and if they're not really positive ones, what can someone do to change that thought pattern that they're having?
So I think one of the tools that I often use is, if you're thinking of a situation and either second, guessing yourself or doubting or thinking, oh, I don't have time for that, I shouldn't do that. There's a lot of those shoulds that pop up. If you think,
Right.
well, okay, well, what advice would you give someone that you love and care about?
Mm.
And usually that's different. Be like, oh, well, I would tell them to go do this, this, and this. And of course, let go of that and don't worry about that. But we tend to have, much higher expectations for ourselves,
Mhm.
and letting go of those things. So recognizing that, oh, okay, maybe what I'm thinking is not necessary, and maybe it's not healthy. And if I was talking to somebody else, I probably wouldn't hold that thought. I would say, oh, no, 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 it's totally fine that you want to do that. Or, oh, in that situation, this is totally warranted. And at the same time, you're saying, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. So looking at those beliefs, the not only just like the old patterning and all those beliefs that we bring along with us from when we were kids and growing up, those kinds of things can be shifted too. But just those conscious thoughts that you have that, and sometimes they're not conscious until we say, what am I telling myself about this? Why am I so upset? And then you say, oh, I'm saying that this isn't fair, or I need to be doing this instead, and I shouldn't have done that, or whatever. And then again, think, oh, well, what would I tell my best friend? Or what would I tell, so, and kind of connect with, oh, there's a different way to look at this. And I'm expecting a lot of myself right now by using these shoulds and by seeing it as, not okay, or I have to, or whatever, when I wouldn't do that same thing for someone else. And I would be, another thing is like reinforcing and celebrating the good things that you do. We also don't do that nearly as much as we would with someone else, so someone that you love and care for, be like, oh, good job, or that was really great, or whatever. And then we do that with ourselves, and we feel selfish or arrogant, or
Right.
Oh, I could have done better. Right. It's like, oh yeah, and you downplay it. So using that as a kind of a check system, it's like, oh, what would I say to somebody else right now? And then it's a little bit of that, kind of reality check. And I've forgotten what the second part of that question was, but in terms of that mindset, how to shift. So I mean, part of it is, just saying, okay, is there something here that I can let go of, or just I like reframing. And one exercise you can do is you get like a really wide rubber band, or like those be strong, those kinds of bands or whatever, something that's not going to bother you or whatever, but you just have on one hand. And you can use that as kind of a reminder tool, move it to the other arm. I don't like the snapping thing. To me, that seems like self-punishment, but just move it to the other side, just as a like, oh, this thing, oh, I just did that thing. I gave myself a should. I said I should have done this. Let me put that over here. Okay, how can I reframe that? Okay, I could have done that, but this happened instead. Okay, how does that feel? Does it feel any different? And usually it does, if we can reframe something. So I think reframing is big once you become aware. So doing that as a little tool of awareness, just to get in that habit of catching yourself. Realize, oh, I'm really hard on myself right now, or I'm not allowing myself, this downtime or this breathing time, or I'm expecting myself to be perfect, and that's creating stress for me. So when you become aware of those things, being able to, okay, let's reframe that. I can let go of this idea and put this one in instead. What does that feel like? Yeah, that feels okay. That feels a lot better. And if you're not sure, then go to that, like, okay, what would I tell so-and-so, my best buddy? Oh, right. I would say that's totally reasonable, not even worth worrying about. Okay, so can I let that go? Because it's totally reasonable and not worth worrying about. Okay. And just, just be open to those new considerations as if it was somebody else, and practice. Because we have all these defaults, and that's the way we kind of automatically think about things. And if we're not used to taking care of ourselves, and we're used to being on ourselves and expecting perfection, it's not going to just, immediately shift once you realize, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. You have to practice doing the reframing, letting go of those things. And, I like body scans, where you just pay attention from the top of your head all the way down through your whole body, and just notice what's going on. You don't have to do anything or fix anything. Just be aware. It's just a good awareness tool to, like, how am I doing? Oh, okay, I do body scanning. Like, wow, my gut is just clenched. It's super tight. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. And then you can just leave it there and not do anything with it. Or you can say, oh, I wonder why. You can say, what am I telling myself? Or you can say, well, what can I actually do to make that release physically? And so just having that attention and that awareness that something is going on with you. Again, it's all about that awareness and asking so that you are aware, instead of just going on autopilot all day until you get done, and then you're just wiped out, and it's like, oh, now I have to go to bed and hopefully sleep okay and get up and do it again. So just having that awareness by doing the checking in and saying, okay, what is going on here?
I think that's a really great tool, because like you have mentioned, it needs to be done all through the day. Especially when you're seeing that you're your mood or the way that you're feeling is changing in some way. Because by the time at the end of the day, you just don't have time
Mhm.
or the energy to really stop and think about what the day was like. I mean, you can look at it in a big picture. However, it's really hard to possibly change your mindset once that moment has disappeared. So, and I think it's really important for caregivers in specifically and those who are highly sensing, because it's really frightening to me to know that a lot of caregivers die. 30% of caregivers die before the one that they're caring for. So it's that in itself needs to be the central focus. I mean, of doing the self-care that you're recommending.
Yes. And I can, as a personal experience, my grandparents, thankfully, they lived very long lives, 93, 95. But at the time that my grandfather got sick, and she was, his primary caregiver. I mean, my uncle would come over and help, but she was, they were the type that if I have my own home, I should be able to take care of it. So she didn't like to pay anybody to come in and clean house, or, so she was doing all of that, plus taking care of him. She would have lived to well over 100. I mean, there was no doubt. She was incredibly healthy. I mean, her demeanor was, she was just so happy and uplifting. And, I mean, she was in a really good place to be having a, major longevity. I mean, like really living well beyond 100. But then he got sick and she completely stopped taking care of herself.
Right.
100%, like didn't do any of the things that she was doing. And so as soon as he was gone, she crashed and burned. And within 3 weeks, she was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 6 months previously, we would have all been, you're kidding. She's so healthy and so, active. And I mean, they ate well, sort of well. They were conscious about eating, exercise. I mean, just they were just really, really healthy. I mean, his was a heart issue and genetic something that just showed up. But yeah, watching that shift from vibrancy to like focus only on him, only on him, only on him, and then as soon as he was gone, I mean, a lot of it was just heartbreak, of course, because they've been together 70, they've been married 74 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But watching that whole thing, with her was super, super hard. And looking back and you're going, wow, how does that happen? Because she allowed all of that to, draw all her energy, from her and going into him. And she stopped all of those things that she had been doing.
Right.
And it's a huge, I didn't know the 30% stat that you just mentioned. That's pretty incredible. So, but it's really not surprising, again, because you get in that mode and especially if you're caring for someone who isn't maybe going to be engaging, where you couldn't have that kind of discussion or say, let's meditate together, or be able to take them out to the mall or something like that. And you don't feel like you can leave for a moment, in terms of safety and security, that kind of stuff, it's that much more challenging to say, oh, well, I'll just have to wait until after my shift, or until after, until somebody else is here to take over or whatever, to do something for me. So it's really important to remember that it's still really necessary so that you can continue to maintain. And so then you pick those things that you can do while you are still there watching, like deep breathing, or most likely you're going to be okay if you are in the room and you can hear if something happens, but being able to close your eyes for 5 minutes and meditate. Most likely that's pretty safe. So acknowledging that there are ways that you can still make that happen, even if you do feel like you can't leave, you can't go walk around the house, you can't go, even step outside if for some reason you feel safe. There are still some things that you can do. And then when you are home, or in your own space and not in that mode, then you can, do some things that take longer. And of course, if you're there 24/7 and you're taking care of your parent in your house and they're always there, there's going to be time when they're sleeping, right? Probably more than you sleep. So, just giving yourself permission to realize, you can't oversee everything every single second of the day and be hyper vigilant and like on constantly. That it's just not feasible. It's not doable. And give yourself permission. And again, by saying this is necessary, it's like, where can I put in all of these things throughout my day, so that I can be taking care of myself, so that I can continue taking care of this person. I'm sure you run into some of that, caring for your mom.
Definitely. Yeah, you really needed, or I needed to take some time for myself. I can say that I didn't do that very well, looking in hindsight. However, I think knowing that statistic myself, I just want to make caregivers aware that they are really compromising themselves when they're not doing the self-care that they need. And thank you so much for sharing that story about your grandparents. That must have been very hard to see your grandmother, who was so vibrant, pass away like so shortly after your grandfather. However, I've heard of other stories too, where like a spouse is taking care of the other spouse, and again, they're ignoring their health. So when that person that they're caring for passes, then their health has changed so dramatically. So they have cancer, for example, and they're passing away a short time later. Either it's happening before, it's happening shortly after. It's something that I really want to help advocate for caregivers, because they always tend to work in isolation and they're not seen and they're not heard. And people need to step in who have kind of walked that journey and give them the support that they need, and to have, the communities that they live in provide this support and resources that they need. So thank you for sharing.
Support is so important too, and recognizing, sometimes we assume that people are going to think badly of us if we can't handle something. So if we say, I need someone to come in and give me a break so that I can have some of this downtime, and they'll, people can feel like, oh, well, I should be able to do that. They're going to think badly of me if I can't, what's wrong with me that I can't manage this? And as highly sensing people, that's even more of that tends to be like, and this is the view, everyone else can manage this. Why can't I? I don't want anyone to think that I can't, and there's something wrong if I can't manage that. And sometimes people do that, if someone that you're talking with has never experienced caregiving whatsoever, they don't know what it's like. They might be able to say, what's the big deal? You're there all the time anyway. They could make some comments that are, degrading or suggest that you should be able to manage it, but reminding yourself, they are not in your situation. Only you are in your situation, whether it's being highly sensing or caregiving or whatever. Only you know your reality. And so if you can validate that, yeah, I am experiencing this and this is what I need, and honoring that so that you can get needs met, so you can keep meeting the needs of the person you're caring for. So, yeah, it's so important for that honoring piece of this is necessary for me to be good to myself so that I can be who I want to be for others.
Totally agree with that statement. I think you do have to honor yourself, and there is nothing wrong. There's nothing you shouldn't, the person need not, the caregiver or the highly sensing person need not have to think that it's shameful or that they have to feel guilty for reaching out for support, because like you've said, other people don't know what you're going through, have no idea, are giving advice that really it doesn't really necessarily pertain to you or make you feel like you can't do it on your own. And that's not the purpose of caregiving. Caregiving is to be able to do those mindful activities, to reach out to people if you need help. And if you need to make a dental or medical appointment, well, find someone who can take care of your loved one while you're doing that, because that's so important. And that is why I think, for me anyway, to advocate for caregivers and highly sensing people who are caregivers is so important, because they need to be recognized. They need to feel empowered to ask for help.
Yes. And to accept it.
Yes.
A lot of times it's really, really challenging to even ask. So getting used to that of asking, but from a place of, this is totally reasonable. I'm going to ask for this, and then receive it, or even receive something that you didn't ask for, but someone's like, hey, that seems really, really rough. How can I help? So instead of thinking, oh, they're busy, they've got their things, whatever, I'm okay, I'll just manage it myself. Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you anyway. Saying, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Let me think about that. And then be really honest with yourself. Okay, if someone was going to come in and give me a couple-hour break, what would that look like for me? How could I use that time the best?
Right.
And then plan something. Or if someone just randomly says, hey, how can I help? Really say, okay, what would really help me right now? And be honest with that and embrace it. And then graciously accept it, instead of saying, oh no, I should be able to handle it myself, because it's my mom, or it's my situation, or my job, or whatever. Being able to ask for is really big. And then being able to accept, whether you've asked for it or not, and any and all support, because it's very taxing, and other people aren't going to get that.
Exactly. I like that. Adding that piece of not only asking, but of receiving and accepting it. Most definitely. So earlier in our conversation, I know that you mentioned taking this inventory on your website for highly sensing people. So my question is, how can a caregiver who is highly sensing ask for support? Is it different? Or should they, again, show other people around them how they are and why they are responding the way that they're responding, so that they can also get that support in addition to having them ask and accept help?
That's a really great question, because we can become aware of it and then go, yeah, but no one's going to get it. So what do I do with that? So you can do it really directly and say, hey, this is me with the inventory, and have that conversation if it's someone that you think that's going to work with. And some people are really sensitive to, having use that word sensitive, but to labels, well, I don't go around going, I'm a sensitive person or whatever, here I am. And you don't have to even use that term, or even say, I'm highly sensing or whatever. You can just say, the way I process things, this is what this is like for me. And just realize that if you're with someone else who's also highly sensing, or a caregiver with another caregiver, right? You don't have to explain, really. I mean, they're going to get you, right? Because they have had that experience. But for someone who's not a caregiver, who's not highly sensing, they're not going to automatically just go, oh, that person's doing that, it must be because, they're just going to see it as different, and in their mind maybe wrong, or needing to be changed or fixed because it doesn't mesh with their view.
Right.
So,
exactly.
so thinking of just being able to share with other people what your experience is like. So if you're needing, more quiet environment, just you don't have to say, I'm a highly sensitive person, so I need, blah, blah, blah. Could you do that for me? You can say, hey, when I'm trying to really, when I'm working or really trying to pay attention to all this stuff, this kind of stuff, the way I process things, this stuff is really, really distracting for me, and I really want to be able to focus. Is there a way we can, shift that? And you don't have to say anything about being highly sensing, or, you don't have to describe,
Mhm.
anything major, but being able to have that dialogue of, hey, this is my experience,
Mm.
because you can assume that they don't know, they don't get it. This is my experience, and this was what would help me. And just ask again, asking. So what would really work for me is to have, a different kind of music on, or just, really notch down the volume, and then I can focus, thanks a lot. Something like that, where you just clue people into what it's like for you. Or if you're having a discussion with someone and you're not seeing the same sides and you're not feeling heard, you can just say, let me give you a little example and share what something's like for you. Or just say, in this particular case, when this happens, this is what I feel and what I'm thinking and what my body reaction is. It might not be that way for you, or it probably isn't that way for you, or whatever, but I just want you to know this is what this is like for me. And so therefore this is what would help me. Because if people don't hear that, and they don't hear what would help, they're not likely to automatically just say, oh yeah, no problem, oh, let me do this for you. If they're also a caregiver, or they're also highly sensing, they'll be like, oh, I totally get that, let's do this and this, or it may not even have come up in the first place. But with someone who doesn't see things the same way, or doesn't have that same experience, filling them in is important. I mean, this part of basic communication style is recognizing that you both come from a different place and you need to share.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I mean, if you're practicing, communication, making sure the other person has heard you, and then you've heard them, and that kind of stuff. And that gets, more in depth, but just being able to share, hey, this is what my experience is like right now. Let me explain this a little bit. You don't have to, really go into it. And this is what would help me. Can we manage that? And you can do that in a work environment. You can do that in a family, do that in a caregiving situation. It's like, wow, if I want to be, on my game and doing exactly what I want to do, these things are distracting me, or making it challenging for me to be that person I want to be. Can we do this, this, and this? Or, I just want you to know, and maybe, starting a new caregiver position, or working, if this is fairly new, and you can say, hey, I'm hoping this is okay with you. I want to really stay on my game, and things can really get, fill up my bucket. They can really get heavy for me. So I like to have, every so often, take a little 5-minute break to do some deep breathing. You're welcome to join me, or, I just want you to realize that I'm doing that so that I can, be the person I want to be. So I think we really need to educate, share, explain, whatever, help people to see what our experience is. And then again, be able to ask for what will help that. Because if you think about it, with like a left-handed person,
Mhm.
if they're struggling, they're at a crowded table at lunch or whatever, and they're, it's like they've got the other arm and everybody else is doing, and it's like, you're not going to just like glare at them and go, figure it out. You can do this. Most
Right.
likely be like, oh, let's switch places. You can be on the end, and then, then you're comfortable and you can use your arm. I mean, it's no big deal, right? But sometimes people are not going to be thinking of that and aware, oh, this person's all cramped up in there. The highly sensing people are probably going to notice, but just being
Right.
able to say, oh, I need to make this person aware of what my experience is like, and what my needs are. And that takes practice too, because again, when we're thinking, oh, I should be able to handle this all by myself, then we're not going to reach out and explain, what that experience is like for you. But practicing that is a really powerful thing for being understood and heard, and getting your needs met, so that you can be the person that you want to be. So yeah, reaching out that way. And again, you don't have to use that label. You can just say, hey, for me, that's all you have to say. This is what my experience is, or this affects me this way. Can we do this instead?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good advice. Yeah, just you don't. I think, like you're saying, you just need to let people know what you need, and how you would like to participate or in helping someone based on what you need, asking for it, and just repeating that, repetition, practice
Mhm.
over and over again, makes it a whole lot easier. not only for you, but for other people to better understand you. And for the sake of not a better terminology, but to get you,
Mhm.
it's a way to share without having to go in with a whole lot of explanation.
Right. And sometimes we have to do more than one statement or, for them to get it. So
Mhm.
just remembering that they're coming from a different place. So rather than coming from, frustration or like, why is this person not getting this? Or, like, why this is so obvious to me. If you're a caregiver, you need this. Well, just remembering that it's not obvious to those who don't have that shared experience. So just saying, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. How can I, I'll frame it this way and then see if they can get it that way. So yeah, just because it is easy to get frustrated when people aren't getting you and not getting your needs met. So we're just, again, recognizing that, look, they don't know. So that's part of my job, is to fill them in and help them to see what that is. And that definitely works better if you're not coming from a place of frustration and anger.
Exactly. Totally understand that. You have given us such an amazing wealth of information. Can you give us like 3 nuggets that caregivers can take away from our discussion today in order for them to be more present and to be a better person themselves, and as a result of being in the moment and being more present with yourself and what your needs are, that you can better help someone else?
Yeah, so I would say that first one is getting rid of that idea that it's selfish and replace that with necessary, mandatory even. It is mandatory that I take care of myself so that I can be the person I want to be, and get that like as a mantra, just over and over and over. It is not just important, it is necessary, it is mandatory. I have to do this so that who I want to be. And then eventually that becomes accepted within yourself. It's like, oh, right, I do have to do this.
Mhm.
Then making sure that you factor in, schedule in some kind of self-care, calming experience every single day throughout the day if you can. So whether that's that deep breathing, just so that you can just stop and be in the moment, let go of the past, stop thinking about the future, and just be, and then reset that nervous system. And then I think the third one is that awareness that you have to check in with yourself, value what your experience is so that you ask how you're doing, and then honor what that is and do something about it, whether that's sharing with someone what that's like for you and getting your environment to change or getting a different response, or it's like, oh, okay, right, what I really need is to schedule in 4 times throughout my day to stop and do deep breathing. Whatever it is that you need, you have to be aware to see how you're doing to be able to do what you need. So that checking in, just asking how you're doing and making that important.
Excellent. I like the idea of making sure that self-care is necessary and mandatory, that you schedule it in during your day. And then just like you said, doing that check-in all through the day and being more aware of what's going on and how you can value your experience and then have the opportunity to change it within yourself so that you can help someone else. So thank you so much for sharing. If people would like to get in touch with you, Tammy, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
The easiest way is to go to Linktree. And for those who aren't familiar, it's linktr.ee. And then, the / and then just my name. So, TAMMYGOEN. And that's got a link to my website. It's got all of my social media. It's got some freebies on there for those who are highly sensing. It's got my inventory. It's got links to ebooks, free ebooks. Pretty much everything about me is on there. So that's definitely the easiest. Just go and pick whatever information that you would like.
Thank you so much for that.
And I would just mention too, I do have a second co-author book that I'm in. And I do have actually a digital file of that. So my landing page is in the works and it's not ready yet. So if anybody wants to email me, I can email a copy of that. It's, me and 19 other authors talking about, self-realization, self-care, growth, if you will.
Mhm.
It's number 18 of the Change series. They've been around forever. And so I do have that option. I just don't have a link on that yet. So, but if anyone's interested, they can reach out and I can send that to them.
Thank you so much, Tammy. This has been really enlightening for caregivers and ways to help them with self-care so that they can be the best person they want to be in order for them to help someone else. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, and really appreciate being able to share it all.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver Cast today. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. Get involved with the show. Send your email to mpetrusi2002@gmail.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Caregiver Cast.